It's the most wonderful time of the week. It's Friday. It's 4 o'clock, or just gone 4 o'clock, which means that most people are putting down their work for the week. Sadly not, but I've got a little break in the middle, so I shall be speaking music, which is always a wonderful thing. I shall be joined by my guest. How are you pronouncing that? Are you pronouncing that like Kohla?
Kohla, yeah.
Yeah. That's fizzy, isn't it? That's a very fizzy name. There we go. I will be talking to Kohla about all sorts of 7-Up any minute now after this. Afternoon, Kohla. Where did that name come from?
Oh, everyone asks me this, and
Of course they do, because you've got a name like Kohla.
Well, so my real name is Rachel Alice Johnson, and I just felt like I wanted something kind of shorter and snappier for like being put on like posters and stuff. And at the time, when I started Kohla, we were doing kind of like R&B. It was kind of like darker and smokier. So the kind of idea of charcoal came into my head. So it kind of came off that like charcoala, then cola.
Yeah.
But everyone seems to think it's Coca-Cola, which is fine.
Well, it would be great if you could get sponsorship from Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
That'd be marvellous. So
yeah,
when you roll out that name, my sort of ADHD brain sort of like then immediately wants to, come out with all of the gags, if you know what I mean. Does that happen? Do people say, "Oh, you feeling sprightly today?"
Yeah. But to be honest, I think well, I've got like a nice logo now, and I think I've got like quite a nice setup on my stage and everything that it's kind of like it fits into the vibe, and
it works, doesn't it?
It's kind of short, and I can put like nice like roses and stuff around it. It looks quite ornate and golden, and so it kind of ties in quite nicely now. But there is a wee part of me that thinks, God, should I pick something else?
Not until a record company pays you extortionate amounts of money to change it.
Well, I think also like the album is so different sonically than the EP as well. So I kind of felt like, oh, should I have waited until I had more work done? But everything kind of moves anyway, and I'm sure in like 10 years I'll be making different music too. So there's kind of no point thinking like, oh, should I have written this or should I have that as my name? Because it's all gonna naturally change anyway. So
good. No, like it. Talking about your music, I can't pigeonhole it, which is great. You say you almost tried to pigeonhole yourself there at the beginning by saying, you started off as this, but would you define yourself in any particular way, really? Because I wouldn't.
Yeah, I think I know where my influences stem from. Like I do love R&B. I love a lot of pop music. I love a lot of soul music. I love a lot of electronica. But I love jazz. I love folk. So it is kind of like a combination of lots of genres into one, and it is quite hard to kind of say to press like, what is this? And
it's quite an experimental aspect to your music.
It's not exactly alternative either, because we've been having some trouble like getting on Six Music too, because it's not alternative enough. So
oh really?
Yeah. Oh. And we're not pop enough for Radio 1. So
I tell you what you need to do then to get on Six Music. You need to dress as a giant cola bottle.
Well, you know what? If that's what I need to
You
do,
should maybe that's what it is. Maybe you should just go like the Rosamund Murphy type thing, and some of her outfits are just quite outlandish, aren't they? You
yeah.
just think,
I mean, I was kind of hoping I was good enough as myself that, but yeah, no, I think that has been part of the issues. Like, it is so different, and it's different sonically to, I don't know anything else in Scotland, at least, that sounds like it. So we've been having trouble, like, with radio being like this. We don't really have soul music. We don't have electronic soul music on these shows. So where do you fit in? And it's good, and we want to support it, but how can we do it? So,
yeah,
but it's,
I'm quite surprised that
mm,
you know a station like you say Radio Six.
yeah,
Yeah, BBC Radio 6. I'm surprised that someone like BBC Radio 6 wouldn't see you as fitting into
yeah,
their rationale because you are definitely not clear cut mainstream pop.
yeah,
You're
yeah.
not.
I think it's been such a learning curve as well, because I don't come from a musical kind of background, really. Like, I don't have any connections to the music industry, so I didn't really know what I was in for when we started the campaign for Romance. And I kind of said to my radio plugger, like, let's try Radio One, Radio Two, Six Music, and it's been really, really hard. But at the same time, we've done well internationally with press, and a lot of journalists really love writing on me because I've got so much to say. There's so much narrative to the project. So it's kind of gone in directions that I didn't think that it would go, and I didn't get some things and I got other things. So it's kind of still been good in a way. But yeah, I actually got picked for the Fresh on the Net with Tom Robinson this week for my song Heavenly. So that got picked in the Fresh fave. So that's like the closest that I've been to Radio 6. So
Love
I was
Tom.
happy with that.
Tom Robinson's a good chap, really. I ran
Yeah.
into Tom Robinson years ago at a festival, and I always felt he was an absolute champion
Yeah, yeah,
of
yeah. I
music.
mean, I like all the shows. I still like a lot of the Radio 1 shows as well, but I think there's so much competition, especially in pop music. It's really oversaturated. So I think by kind of halfway through the campaign, we kind of reassembled a bit, and we're like, right, let's kind of re-angle this to more kind of jazzy, kind of soulful, more artistic rather than commercial pop. So yeah, it's kind of like it's kind of rounded up nicely at the end as well, and we got some good features. So
That's good.
yeah.
By the way, if anyone can hear any kind of bleeding of music in the background, that's my next door neighbour who's decided that he's actually found his stereo this afternoon after months of not. Fortunately, I think he's bought the new Passenger album, the 10th anniversary of the Passenger album, because it used to be just dance music next door.
Ah,
It used to mix very badly, but it's not so bad this afternoon. So if you're enjoying that, I don't know what we do about PRS and that, but tough really. It's my neighbour; he can pay. Yeah, so in terms of you say the kind of the narratives being picked up, especially in some foreign countries. Which countries are those that are where you're finding your space and
we're getting quite a lot from North America,
oh wow.
which is good. We're getting quite a lot in California, which is nice. But also we got quite a few things from like Brazil and stuff. So and then Indonesia as well. So
That's
it's kind of
interesting.
fun. Yeah, I know.
What
Uh,
do you think it is about your narrative that's being picked up then?
I think it's everyone's liking how kind of inventive the production is.
Yep.
Because I think there's a lot of support for soul music in America, but kind of cinematic and electronic stuff is pretty fresh. So I think they're quite excited by that. I got put in Ear Milk this morning, which is like a big Californian music blog, which is really cool. So yeah, it's kind of nice. It's been like opening up a lot of doors and just getting lots of different fans in different places. I've been seeing that my Spotify is like, I've never been playlisted on editorial playlist, but I'm getting a lot of fans from all around the world, which is
Oh,
nice.
well, now listen, we can do something a little bit about that anyway, because as you may or may not know, if you've watched any of these recently, since I have moved from upstairs to downstairs here and then got rid of the sheet and all of those things and started to get my arse into gear after 3 years, I have now started the My Music podcast playlist.
Fab, yeah.
So as soon as we finish this today, you will be added to that.
Oh,
There
that's
you go.
exactly what I need.
Yeah, and and you can pick the song as well.
Oh, fab. Oh,
Yeah, is there
yay.
a particular song you would like on there?
Ooh. Oh, I
Choices,
don't
choices.
know. It's hard because like I do love all of them. I I'm promoting Golden at the moment. That's the one that was in Earmilk this morning. So
We'll
yeah, I'm a
go
bit,
for Golden.
yeah.
Yeah, and I'll try and find another song to go behind it from some
Yeah.
artist that
Yeah, yeah,
then
yeah.
follows on from there. There we go. That would be nice. It, in terms of when you started writing,
Mm.
have your inspirations changed much from then?
Yeah. Well, because I wasn't really brought up, like we had a lot of classical music played when I was a kid, Beethoven, like Mozart, Debussy. I
Nice.
played clarinet. Yeah, so I was more into kind of classical stuff, and my dad's from Liverpool, so a lot of the Beatles. And then I kind of got into music by like buying the now that's what I call music CD compilations and listen to a lot of Girls Aloud and the Sugar Babes and
I've got to ask you actually, if you
yeah,
were brought up on classical music, did your parents have that album? Was it the Children's Guide to the Orchestra? Do you remember that?
I don't think so.
I loved that album. It
Uh,
had like, I thought it also had something like, you know that piece of music, do 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 do
yeah.
do 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 do. But then what it did, it sort of broke it all down, and it would go, this is woodwind. Do you know what I
Uh,
mean? This is the oboe. It was marvelous, and it separated them all out, and it would go
yeah.
through the
Oh,
orchestra.
wow.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
good.
No, we had I listened to a lot of classic FM, like on the way to school and coming home from school. And then I was like playing in the orchestra and I was doing competitions and stuff. So yeah, classical. And then got into like a lot of pop and R&B. And then, but basically for this album and like recently, I kind of dug back into 60s, more kind of soul-y and jazzy stuff like
Nice.
James and Sam Cooke and Nat King Cole and stuff. So stuff that I'd heard a wee bit of when I was younger, but I never really had time to properly sit down and listen to it. And simultaneously, I had a breakup as well. So listening to all the heartbreak tunes and getting
No.
into my feelings.
I love finding like the classic albums from
Yeah.
those here. I know and when I say classic albums, perhaps I mean classic albums, but I also like finding sort of like the kind of wayward albums from that era as well.
Yeah, I think with me, it's always just finding the music that speaks to you in the moment. And for me, like art has always meant to be healing. And I definitely felt healed when I listened to Etta James and Sam Cooke and everyone. And at the same time, I was building up this studio that I'm in now, which is in my house. And I was learning kind of orchestral programming on Ableton and stuff. So it kind of went hand in hand with that. I was kind of having fun uh, making the orchestra and like using all the parts and bringing in like my stuff from when I was learning clarinet as a kid and combining it with like the pop stuff that I'd been making for the past couple of years. So yeah, it was a big combination of things. I think that's also why the album feels quite varied. It's quite a mix of like different styles and stuff. put together, but it still feels very cohesive and with a strong narrative through the whole thing. So yeah.
I could be wrong here, but I just get a sense you're quite artistic
Yeah.
overall as well. Do you do other things? Do you paint,
Yeah,
etc.?
yeah. So my bachelor's degree was in fine art. So I did painting. So I went to the Edinburgh College of Art and I painted for 4 years. So I was doing these huge oil paintings. I was doing like a mix of like landscape and portraiture. Again, just really trying to delve into feeling and using color and texture and depth and contrast and shape and stuff to express my feelings. And then it's really similar kind of making songs now because it's the same thing, but it's just using your head in a different way and thinking of, because I have synesthesia as well, so my brain and like sounds and colors are all connected. So just thinking like, how does this feel and how can I make this out of this feeling? So yeah, and then I've been doing dance as well and film and everything. I really just love art. I love talking about art. I love making art. So
Excuse me if you hear people talking about washing machines in the background.
love washing machines too.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of that, have you ever thought about combining those arts as well? Because I've spoken to a number of artists who have quite successfully in the last couple of years, and I think it's partly, you talked earlier about trying to find your way in the media as well, or trying to find that stream. But there's
Yeah.
been some quite interesting artists who have been on who have managed to navigate that by perhaps combining different art forms. I've had
Yeah.
artists on who've written a book, who've put the music with a book, so they published it as a
Yeah.
book rather than as an album. I've had artists on who have, released the music but as an art exhibition or combined with an art exhibition. Would that interest you? Is that
Yeah,
something
yeah,
you've thought
yeah.
about?
So with the album, so I've painted like the cover arts for the singles. If you go into my Spotify, you can see the cover arts, and those are like oil paintings. I've also done a lot of poetry, which is displayed on my social media to go alongside it. And I kind of like style everything myself. Like I research a lot of kind of vintage costumes and jewelry and stuff, kind of location source as well for taking a lot of images on film. And yeah, so it's very kind of connected. But I've always done that as well. With my EP, I was doing like a lot of dance, so I had backing dancers for my live shows and stuff, and I choreographed like the whole show. So it was like dancing. It's quite hard to switch off my brain from doing everything because I've always been like this.
So focused, so focused.
Yeah,
Do you almost feel like there's a kind of missing platform out there at the moment in terms of like
yeah,
like a social platform or whatever, that there's not something that necessarily allows an artist to bring, but you've got things like Patreon and whatever where you can support an artist and they can upload
yeah.
all sorts of different media, but as a social platform, something that maybe allows an artist to bring all of those things together in more.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely really hard. I've noticed, like, even in my press stuff as well, like they don't really dig into, or they don't often dig into everything that I do, which is, it can be a bit frustrating because I know that I put in so much, and that it's not just music, it's poems and it's fine art and it's styling and it's like I'm a producer as well, and yeah, every like bit and like everything is really my heart, my soul into everything. And there isn't really a platform for that. But in saying that, I do have really amazing supporters, and I have fans that buy my paintings and buy my drawings and stuff, and are buying my music. So yeah, I think the real ones, no.
Maybe you'd be suited to something like a festival space. I was thinking,
Mm,
like
yeah,
of, in the same way that like Peter Gabriel developed kind of WOMAD because he had that real passion for, you know, world music and but not
Yeah,
just world music, but world arts and culture and stuff like that. And
yeah.
although he almost went bankrupt with it at one point, but it's kind of turned
Mm.
around now. It's difficult, isn't it? But sometimes I think maybe some artists where they're
Yeah.
quite fiscal in lots of areas.
Hmm.
Maybe it's about finding that space where they
Yeah,
can
yeah, for
do all
sure.
of it. Yeah,
Yeah, I definitely notice like when I'm included in like arts publications like the Skinny or the List or stuff like that, where they look at lots of different forms of art, or Snack Magazine, they really get it and they really want to dive in and say like, oh, you like this and you like that. And yeah, I feel very kind of understood in those kind of artsy spaces. But I would love to do something kind of physical and in person of of doing like music plus visual art and everything too. But again, it's so expensive. You need a lot of funding for stuff like that. And even, we've got Hidden Door Festival in Edinburgh. I think it's difficult for them to source their funding every year. So yeah, definitely the problem with art. But perhaps if I could link up with more kind of professional organizations and stuff like that who have big budgets. It's hard when you're so creative and like you have so much to give, but it's yeah, the budget
yeah.
involved.
I used to go to various festivals with something called the FRA, which is the Festival Radio Association. One of them we did every year. It was actually it started off as a very much a Christian festival, but it then expanded out. It really became sort of a cultural art, faith, or spiritual type festival. Was Greenbelt, which is still going. And certainly in terms of the artists that are there, they're not just Christian artists. They're very much across the board. I just thought it was one of the things that was really great about that as a festival, as it kind of grew up, was the fact that it did promote the arts,
Mhm.
and it did give a space for artists to do some pretty wacky stuff.
Yeah,
You
I
know.
know. I think also combined that like where we are kind of economically after the pandemic and everything that's going on at the moment, like arts budgets are being cut, and
When they really
yeah,
shouldn't be.
when they shouldn't be at all. But
Yeah.
it's I feel like it's becoming rarer and rarer to have these spaces, and there's been so many festivals, unfortunately, uh, closing down just because of ticket sales. Like they get so far to almost happening, and then they're just like, "Oh, we just didn't sell enough tickets." And
There may have been too many, of course. I
mm,
mean, seemed to be like an absolute uprising of festivals at one point.
yeah, 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 yeah,
And
yeah,
maybe it's about you know, like any market, really, consolidation, and maybe some of those smaller ones coming together and forming something
yeah,
that actually works
yeah.
on a fiscal nature, etc. You
Mm,
meant, you talk about Scotland. I've had various Scottish musicians on here of late. Scotland's having a bit of a kind of a great time in terms of producing musicians,
mm, mm-hmm.
especially sort of around Lothian and that sort of area. What,
Yeah.
what what is it in the water up there in Scotland that's doing? I mean, come on, Scotland's always produced some great musicians.
Yeah.
I'm wearing a
Um,
Marillion top. I mean, Fish was from Scotland. Uh, you know, and then there were the Proclaimers, of course, it's still
mm,
going. But
yeah.
at the moment, it seems that we are getting really great musicians out of Scotland. So what is
Yeah,
it?
yeah. Well, the scene in Glasgow has always been thriving, but I would say Edinburgh. What is nice about being from Edinburgh is that it is quiet, and there's a lot of thinking time. And I live in the countryside, and so much of my music, as much as it is about heartbreak, it's also about nature and healing, and kind of having that peaceful nature around me to think deeply. So I think Edinburgh, I mean, it's a residential city. And we do have a really interesting art culture here. We've got like the Fringe Festival, which is one of the biggest, or if not the biggest, arts festival in the world. We've got really amazing art galleries too. There's a lot of kind of art openings. We've got really good independent cinemas and stuff too. So it is like, it's like a quietly artsy city. And yeah, I think there's just a lot of time for reflection, which is really nice. And the artists that I know in Edinburgh, they're pretty similar to me in that when we hang out, everyone's kind of initially quite reserved and introverted, but yeah, definitely really thriving on deep conversations and yeah, deep thinkers too. So
Two of the artists that we've had on that immediately spring to mind are B. Charlotte, who's
yeah,
been on here before, who you may or may not know,
yeah.
and Sylvie as well.
Oh right, yeah,
Yeah, now,
yeah.
now Sylvie. Now I was just thinking whilst you were saying that and trying to link things together, that Sylvie actually did a little documentary for the BBC
Yeah, I saw that.
on. Yeah,
Yeah.
you need to get into the BBC to do a little arts thing for Radio 6.
Yeah. Well, you know what?
Did you
That
know
was,
what I mean? And then like
yeah,
segue in your music, and then you're
I
there.
know. I'm
So
actually I'm not supported from BBC introducing in Scotland, unfortunately, so I don't think that would ever happen. But the Newcastle show and the Leeds show support me, so maybe I can do something with them.
that's mad, isn't
I
it?
know. Yeah, I don't know what I did.
What you did in Scotland to get excluded from Scotland, or
Yeah,
what you did
I don't
in
know.
Newcastle to.
Yeah, I think I know the producer in Newcastle is a huge Lana Del Rey fan. So I think she heard my stuff and she saw it and she was like, this is a bit of me. So
That
um
makes so much sense.
yeah, I think in Scotland as well, like the introducing show, they play a lot of dance music and a lot of like very commercial pop. So it's I don't really fit into that. So I think perhaps that might be why. I can't think of anything else.
There you go. There you go. Well, I just put Geordie in your lyrics more often, and
Yeah. Well, you know what? England have been really amazing for promoting my music over the past couple of months. So, and there's been like a lot of support for soul music. So I think it's just kind of finding the right people and the ones who really get it and want to support it. So not everyone's
well,
like it. So.
I get it. So maybe other people in my area might get it because I'm based in the southwest.
Oh,
So
cool.
so
Okay.
maybe that maybe it's time to do a little tour of sort of Bristol and
Yeah.
South. You know.
Yeah. 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 Well, I did a show in London a couple of months ago, and it was amazing. It was packed out. And then I've been down to Bournemouth for like a Popgirlz lecture. I don't know if you know about Popgirlz.
No, tell me about Popgirlz.
So I run, it's like a feminist kind of activist group for women in music, also trans non-binary people as well. So I set it up in like 2019, just with the idea of kind of creating more of a community, because I found it really hard to make friends initially in the music scene. Coming from art school, there wasn't really a big collaboration between the art school and the music scene. So I was kind of going to events by myself and being shy and like trying to make friends, and I found it really hard. So I thought about making this group where I could bring everyone that I had already met from music, make everyone friends, and start doing kind of events online in the pandemic and then also in person. And then it kind of grew into other aspects of like activism. We ran a campaign with Spotify to get more women on Spotify playlists as well. And then I've been doing lectures around universities in the UK. So I went down to Bournemouth and I did a lecture there. I had the best time. I really like England. Particularly love the South. Just having the best time, meeting really interesting and really smart people, having great conversations, hanging out at the beach. It was fab.
I'm glad. Hopefully helping to address that as well. When I looked at the playlist actually for this podcast, it's quite heavily women orientated.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Which is really good. Like, I think, you know, a lot of the issues kind of stem quite high up in the industry. There's a lot of really amazing work happening at the grassroots level, because everyone's kind of talking about it and making subtle changes. But it's really what we can do can really influence like the major labels and the bigger festivals by just us saying, like, put more women and people of color and people who need support onto playlists and into gigs and festivals and everything. So yeah, it's really good.
it's still, and you know, there's still a lot of issues there, and there's still a lot
Yeah,
of issues that need
yeah,
addressing. I was talking on here to Georgia Meek about that, because she's quite active as well in that
yeah.
space, and I'd had one guest on who she had interest from a major record label, and then was told that it could progress if she lost weight.
Oh, right. Was that like recently?
Yeah, recently.
I didn't
I,
know they were still kind of saying this stuff.
it's bad, isn't it?
Yeah,
I it shocked me when she said it, because you know, you'd think that in this day and age of kind of equity and inclusion, and you know, that actually we wouldn't even be having those conversations anymore.
yeah.
But unfortunately, it's there. You know, it's
I
still
know.
prevalent. So
I know.
what can it's interesting, because I did a podcast earlier this week on this whole piece about men in modern society, and especially in the sort of the workplace and whatever, you know, surrounded by now women's only networks and whatever. How can we support? How can we be? You know, how can you be allies? What you know? How can we help still continue that change? And also, how do I navigate it as a man? Because even that's could be
Yeah.
complicated.
Well, I would say you're doing a fantastic job at the moment. Like, it's always hard because, you know, you don't want to be like saying the wrong thing, or like, I know like a lot of men who try and help out, they kind of get a bit anxious about it, but it's really just simple things like sharing our posts, and like economically, if you don't have money to like buy music, even just like talking about like a female artist or sharing her music online with a friend, that's a great help, because that's what we're needing is especially as independent artists, we need exposure. So we just need help kind of having our music shared and played on stations, talked about, and also just kind of lending an ear to whatever issues that we want to talk about, and we feel like making us feel comfortable being able to say it too is really what it comes down to. So yeah.
Just keep doing it, then, folks.
Yeah.
Let's all keep doing it. You know, every little helps.
Yeah.
That should never have been in the domain of one supermarket. That should really be
Yeah.
everybody's little saying in life, shouldn't it? Really, because it is true. I mean, the thing is that I think sometimes we forget that. I think it's very easy in this day and age. I it was reminiscing with someone the other day about growing up in effectively in the age of sort of Live Aid and Band Aid and all of that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know, and there was a definite kind of very strong belief growing up as a teenager that music was such a great vehicle for change, and that we could really change the world.
Yeah.
And then we kind of hit a naive patch where, or a reality patch where our naivety was kind of shone a light on, and we realised that actually the problems were much more systemic
Yeah.
than perhaps music could just change. But I loved the passion that was there at that kind of time, and
Yeah.
but I think we're almost in danger sometimes in the modern day and age of going, well, there's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah. I think I completely understand that, because even with Popgirlz and what I do for that, there comes a point where you're giving so much that you think, I'm completely exhausted, and I've improved it, but I haven't solved sexism. Like that's huge. That's worldwide. It's it feels impossible. But I think what we really kind of need to champion is how good it is to improve things even slightly, and to have that wee bit of faith that even if you're doing like your little bit, that is still amazing. And I think if everyone kind of had that mindset, we could achieve so much. It's kind of similar to like recycling. If we all like do a wee bit, then it does add up. And there's a lot going wrong in the world, but it's still improving if you're doing your wee bit.
Well, the way I like to think about it is this, going deep for a minute. The way I like to think about it is, if you think about a pair of scales, right? Because what we're ultimately looking for is balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It takes just one little grain or one little degree on a pair of scales to get balance. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel that.
So really, although sometimes we think it's about like doing that in order to, we can't ever necessarily achieve that. But if we can be that one grain, that one grain makes a difference to that balance. So there you go. We'll leave all of the people today with that wonderful thought. They're now going, what the hell's salt or a grain got to do with music? The real thing here, folks, is and what we're kind of saying is, if you want to make a bit of a difference, if you'd like to go to Kohla's Spotify now and press the follow button, and when she's releasing something, pre-save it, then that's your grain. You're adding your grain. Do you see what we're saying?
Yeah.
Right.
That is exactly what I need.
That just manifests it. Okay, that makes it real and tangible for you. So if you could do that, that would be marvellous. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. What a nice chat.
Because of this new mise en scène in the background, I do invite you, please, if you send in anything, we will display in the background. And I will talk about it, not just on this show, but on the multiple shows that I do throughout the day, so that we just keep things going.
Cool.
We've recent additions included Lucy May here, who also sent what I'm wearing today, which is rather nice. Look at that. There's Lucy May top and a mug.
Great.
Which is marvellous. There's and she got a whole reel to herself this morning. But yeah, but as you can see, there's quite a number of females on here already. Yeah. Which is tremendous, and we'd love to add you to it. We will be adding Golden to the playlist as well, so we'll make sure that happens. And I'd love to invite you back sometime, because you're a great conversation. Folks, this is Kohla. Nothing to do with the drink, but if Kohla, you're watching and you'd like to sponsor her, that would be great. Radio 6 Music. If you're listening, what the hell? Sort your life out. Actually, I had a friend that worked at Radio 6. I might even contact him afterwards.
Yes.
What the hell? Because that's not right on any shape or form. Pleasure to have you on. Please, folks, do support independent musicians. That's what it's all about. Let's share the love out there. Have a good weekend, everybody. If you're watching live, if you're catching up with this on the old Spotify or Amazon or whatever, apparently the majority of people that listen to this listen to it on Alexa. Would you believe it? But yeah, have a great time, whatever you are doing as well. And I'll be back next week with more of the same, my music. Until then, Bye bye. Take care of yourselves.
Bye.